So today we're going to go over how I make beats using the SP404 from start to finish in real time. Chopping samples, building patterns, arranging a beat, and finally mixing. And we're going to go over a couple different ways you can do all of this inside just the SP404 or using additional hardware or DAWs. And this video pulls together 3 live streams I did last year, so you can see each step of the process in real time as I make my track Lingering Light. Let's get into it. We've got this guitar. I'm going to just raise the volume a little. So we'll start with chopping this one up. So I'm going to just put this on H so it's by itself. I think we might do a little sound design before we actually do anything else, because I kind of want to make it a little noisier. So we'll do 404. Let me check that we're running together so we can add something else. Kind of want that like crumbling compressed sound. It's like, do we just completely obliterate it with lo-fi, or do we kind of... I like that. Let's hear it without anything. That sounds good. I mean, it's well mixed and stuff, but I like that crumble to it. So I think we'll go that. Let's just resample that. And I have no idea what the BPM for this track was, so we'll just record. While I do that, Northwest Nosferatu says, since the inclusion of the looper in the 4.04 firmware, I even use the looper to record basic 2, 4, 8-bar loops rather than the record feature of old. Vastly prefer that workflow over just doing direct record to pad. That's awesome. That is a great way to do it. Also, adjusting the play rate after doing that is one of my favorite things to get. You change the pitch, but you get so many cool little artifacts and stuff. I mean, we could even do that maybe with this track, but yeah, I like that better. So now what we're going to do is go into chop, make sure we trigger the right one that we want, and then we can either auto mark or just kind of do it ourselves. Actually, before we do that, let's shorten this because I think this has a couple bars worth in it. Let's try. I'm just looking at the end of the waveform. That should be the start of a second bar. That's perfect. Okay, so that, now that we've chopped that up, it's going to be a little shorter. I'm not going to truncate it because we may need to go back or something like that. But we'll leave it there for that. Let's go into chop. And I'm still wondering, do we want to, let's just see if we can kind of, let's do an auto mark actually. Let's do an auto, or a time division of 8. I'm debating, do we want to do time division? Do we want to do transient? We'll just do 8 in, not level, time division. Let's do that, see what we got. Okay, so as you can hear, there are pops and things like that. Let's just assign to pad and we can fix that. So I'm going to put these here. And then we'll fix those pops with some envelope. So we're going to go to envelope. We're going to hold remain so that the whole bank is going to get this adjustment. Let's just add a little bit. And I don't mind putting a little more release. And now... kind of like that already. Something, there might be something there. I wanted to chop this first. Oh yeah, one other thing I want to do. Drop the pitch. We're going to hold remain again. I always typically just try down 4 first for some reason. I just like the way that that sounds. Might be something there. Okay, next up what I want to do is take that drum and we're going to chop that up. Okay, so let's copy the drum. We'll go to D. Now, from what I remember, I chopped this up on Koala, and I think I did just one measure, and I might have like stretched it with the quantize there. So, with that in mind, we should be able to chop this. Let's try transient though, because maybe we can get just the sounds we want. Now, transient for me is always kind of funny with, it's like the mid doesn't get everything out. Like, there's just like the soft does like nothing, and then mid can be hit or miss, and then hard is like every single sound. So let's start with mid and see what it does. Yeah, see, look how it just did like every sound. So let's try soft. We'll delete all marks. Let's do that one more time. Let's go soft, see what happens. That should work. Okay, let's go to assign to pad, and we'll go okay. So I just like to have kick, snare, hi-hat, and then the rest, so that's why I did it kind of spaced out a little bit. Let's go with that. I'll check the chat. I'm going to move this microphone, blocking the chat from there. Now, I do want a kick that doesn't have any high end, so what I'm going to do is just get the decay of that. Let's truncate this one, and then we're going to go into the envelope and just take a little bit out at the end there. I'm just getting out that kind of click right at the end. Then what I'm going to do is put this into bus 1 really quickly, because I want to, let's try 303. I'm just seeing, maybe isolator actually. So this is what the kick would originally be. It's missing. Yeah, I want like a little more click to it. I just want that hi-hat. Hear that hi-hat? If I emphasize it, I want that gone. That should work. Okay, so we're going to just resample that. Oh, why did that add? Oh, because it's still, no. I don't know why that thing's like distorted. Maybe we can use that though. I'm going to delete that and try it one more time. Let's go to that. Oh, it's because, let's see. We'll try that one more time. Okay, well, we'll keep it. Maybe it's, oh, I know what it is. I think it's clipping. Yeah, okay. So we'll just, we'll drop the volume a little bit, and then let's try that. I think it's clipping. That's why it's got that really gritty sound. Might work. Maybe we can keep it, but first I'd want to try it this way. Okay, now let's try resampling, and if it still doesn't, we'll just keep it. There we go. Now listen to the difference in those kicks. Much thicker and a lot more low end, and then we got rid of that hi-hat that was in there. So now we'll switch it back to bus 2, and exchange is shift 5. We're going to exchange those two, and then I want to get that right there. No hi-hat. This one we're going to adjust. Oh, perfect. We have an open hi-hat. Okay, great. And let's get one of these hi-hats too. See, it's got that snare. Okay, one thing we can do is just see what would happen if on bus 2 we add a ring mod here. I'm just seeing if we can kind of get a better hi-hat sound. I don't like that. If you take white noise though, you can get a really nice hi-hat from it. Okay, I want to add a little reverb. After this, we should be done with the sound design on these drums, chopping the drums, but yeah. Okay. I'm wondering if maybe we can get a different... Let me check something actually. Does this kick... Yeah, this kick might have... See, they all have that. That's the one thing when you're chopping, you kind of get those weird artifacts from different things. But that's all right. Well, we're just going to add some reverb to the snare, and then we'll call it and start flipping. SX reverb is pretty excessive. Maybe that's not the one we want. Let's try just normal reverb. Lunar Glitch is in the chat. What's going on? Welcome. Yeah, I like that. It's a lot of reverb. We might change it later, but I want one with a lot of reverb, one without. So let's resample up here. Here we go. Let all that reverb tail ring out. Yeah, I like that. Okay, we can always, we'll keep that original one if we need it, but for now we'll switch those. And then let's go and just set that to bus 2. Yeah, that should work. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, I think we'll stick with D as our pattern. Do we have anything on D? No, we don't. Okay, so let's just start with maybe like 77 BPM, and then we can go from there. And I think what we'll start with is doing TR rec mode, actually. If we go into the pattern and it reset. Go back to 77. Okay, and let's, well actually we're gonna go into TR rec mode so it doesn't matter. Let's go to hitting the wrong knobs. 4 bars. I'm curious, does anybody ever set their patterns to these really long bars? Because I typically start at a smaller one like 2 or 4 and then duplicate. But they have the option, and I'm curious if anybody in the chat actually uses those larger ones because it's so quick to go past 4 and 2 to get to those larger ones. It's a bit of an inconvenience, but I'm curious if people in the chat are using that. Okay, so let's go. We got 4 bars, so we'll just do a couple of kicks to start. We'll do one on every one, and I think we'll tweak it a little bit as we go. What we're going to do, though, for the snare is go a little off time. We'll do start a little early. We'll pull it here and here. There we go. Yeah, Space Tiger says, I duplicate to build up from 2 or 4 to 8 and 16. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm the same way. Okay, before get ahead of ourselves, let's get that gate off of that snare. Okay, perfect. Cool, okay. So very simple so far. I think I'm gonna up the BPM a little bit. That's a little sleepy. Let's do maybe like 91. Or 87 works. I don't know why I put it to 91 and it just went with that, but that's cool. Let's stick with that. Let's check out. We're gonna keep the drums really simple just to have an idea of like a beat. Just hearing kind of where we're at. I actually think we're going to up the pitch now. Let's go maybe up 1. something. I like that. We can maybe use that for a lead too. Yeah, I like that. Let's put that in and let's go from there. Then we can kind of elaborate on the kick and the snare and all that. Oh, I want the quantize up actually. So let's get out of that and let's go there. I think we'll do a grid of 8. Let's go back to 4 bars. We do not want to do that. And let's put on just a bit of quantize. We'll keep it loose. Okay. Cool. All right, so I like that. The drums are super simple as they are right now. We're going to change that in a second. I just wanted to kind of get a vibe for the BPM. That's not a click. I'm not the biggest fan of clicks. I just want to hear the drums to get that context when I'm sequencing. Okay, perfect. One thing I want to do though is, can we hold remain and shut? I don't know. I think we have to shut all of them individually. Let's try shutting the gates off, and then we're going to put these in a mute group so that they're going to cancel each other out anytime one triggers. Like one triggers after the other, the previous one's going to cancel. It just cleans it up a lot. I like adding that cassette sim on there. It's up that wow and flutter too. Okay, let's check out the drums. Yeah, there's something there. All right, let's try that. Let's see what we got. I still think I kind of want to, I always seem to be doing like higher BPMs lately for beats. I want to do something sleepy, and yet my first inclination is speed it up. But let's stick with the BPM that we're at for right now. Kind of keep it a little sleepier. Change the vibe from normal, and then we'll just go from there if we need to. Looks like one of my lights just died, but that's all right. So let's go here. And let's do real time. Do we have the metronome? It seems to be off. Yeah, we can leave it off though. We've got the kick. Actually, before we go in and do the real time hi-hats, let's add some snares and kicks. And we'll do it a little off time and stuff like that. Let's go in. I am going to do TR rec mode for this. Let's do the not reverb snare. And we're going to drop the velocity quite a bit. Change the start. And let's go. We're gonna do some like ghost notes. See what that sounds like. And let's put those there. Less velocity on that. You're probably not even hearing it. I'm barely hearing it. I just want it kind of in the background to add a little groove. Okay, I have this one to 10 and now I can hear it a little more, so I'm gonna drop it back down though for most of them. We'll do that. We'll change some to 10, some to 5. I'm just kind of putting them anywhere because I just want to kind of, like a drummer, just kind of getting a feel while they're playing, add some groove, and then we'll get the kicks in as well. Perfect. Okay, now what I want to do is go back to that kick, or go back to that snare real quick. Let's drop the volume a little bit, and let's shut the gate off. Now let's hear that. Okay, now I'm just listening where else I want to add the kicks. And we could like live pattern those in, but I think we'll keep it kind of more natural, or programmed. I've been doing a lot with TR-Rec mode lately because I like doing those time changes and things like that. Denick in the chat says you're doing great. Thanks, appreciate that. Let's go and get this kick. And we're gonna go back in here. And we'll do TR-Rec mode again. Let's go here. Let's make sure we've got, okay, that's good. Let's change the start. Again, I want to pull the beat a little bit. There we go. Let's put a kick on 7, and we'll drop the volume. Kick on 3. See what that sounds like. No, I don't like that. Let's put that there. I actually really want that kick like faster almost. Let's pull it back even farther. We got it like clashing. Hold on. Let's go. Let's pull this one back a little. Let's put it to 90. And then we'll set this one here. Let's try that. That's what I wanted. I just want this one to be a little quieter. Okay, now let's go maybe here. What about that? Let's try that. For that last one, let's add a little more kick there. And let's get one more. Let's try that. That might be too slow. Yeah, no, we got to do that other thing we did where we go 1 and 2. There we go, perfect. That's what I wanted with the kicks. Okay, so I'm glad we stuck with that BPM for now because I think it's still sounding very kind of just like chill, but just, I don't know, like maybe like old Cloud Dead stuff or whatever, or Odd Nosdom. Yeah, I like that. Okay, now let's look into getting those hi-hats on. And I do like the hi-hats we cut up, these, but we've also got some hi-hats from one of my sample packs. Where is it? If I can find. This is from my Retro Rewind. Those R's get me. Retro Rewind sample pack, and this is the Warped Wax Kit. Just a ton of grit added to it, and I really like those hi-hats. So I think really quickly I'm gonna just copy that and find one of those hi-hats in isolation, because those other hi-hats have all that artifacting from that sample. So it never hurts to just take additional samples, right? You know, you can always mix and match. And then if you add a little silence at the start, it's gonna automatically add some wonkiness, like that off-time vibe that you usually want in like lo-fi and boom bap. So that is one thing you can do, or you can make two, one that's more like right on, and then one that's not. So we actually will do that. And I'll just go back to here. We'll add a little silence to it at the start. Whoa, we totally just, that almost works though. Let's do that. Oh, I like that hi-hat. That hi-hat should work. Both of those should work. Where's 16 velocity? Let's do that and not have the quantize on. We're gonna be brave and try to do it without the quantize. Stankmoss says that's sounding right. Join is dope. Appreciate it. And Psych Rock says this sounds sick. I call it auto swing with the space before the sample. That's a good way to put it. I like that auto swing. I hope you don't mind if I take it. And nice to see you pry yourself from the P6, Psych Rock. Hopefully it's treating you well. Let me know in the chat how are you getting along with the P6. But let's get that in. Let's do that. We'll get out of TR rec mode. Yeah, we're in real time. I guess we'll put a little quantize on. Let's see how it turns out. I almost want to do it without. I'll tell you what we'll do. I know we can undo it, but just to play it safe, I'm going to copy that so we have it. I always like to kind of keep duplicates and all that of the different pathways we're going. And then let's see what we get. We'll put a little quantize on. And I'm going to find where that hi-hat was. It was this one. We're going to put it on rehearsal. Go to 16 velocity. That first one's a little off because I didn't realize I was going, but I'm going to keep it. Okay, that last one we might go into TR rec mode and fix. But I like that. Let's go in. I am going USB into the computer, so you should get panning. Sometimes when you're live streaming it doesn't, but what we are going to do is pan this a little right. So I'm hearing it in my right ear. Hopefully you're hearing it in that way, because we're also going to go back to that other sample and pan this one left. And this one we'll do just slightly left, or actually more left. And let's go and add a little release. That works. And we can also up the pitch. We'll keep it at 0 for now. Drop the volume a little bit. Okay, let's hear how that sounds. Yo, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, perfect. Did we start at 3? Let's see. Oh, I guess it wasn't recording. Okay, let's try again. don't know why it's not taking it. Let's start that over and get that to record this time. Perfect. Now, these headphones have a terrible frequency response, and hi-hats usually need to be like up to ton for me to hear them. So if the hi-hat sounds loud to you, let me know. You can be my mixing ears, but I am going to tone down this hi-hat a bit. Stinkmon says, and Psychorock, I'll get to you in just 1 second. I want to ask Stinkmon a question real quick. Stinkmon says, interesting, I never use pattern record straight into Logic. Might try it out. Oh, I'm using Logic as like my tape to like record into the live stream, but are you saying you just kind of vibe out and record everything and then sequence it in Logic? That's a really cool way to do it. I just like separating myself from the DAW as much as possible until I'm done, and then move it into the DAW, either as a 2-track that I can stem split, or I kind of do pattern mutes. We're going to talk about it more in a video I'm making soon, but let me know, Stinkbond. And Psychrock, P6 is great. Lo-Fi reminds me of the 202-303, definitely. I'm traveling for work starting Monday, so I'll be taking it to the hotel all week and working on it. But thanks for all your videos and cheat sheet. Appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully it helps. Yeah, I have cheat sheets also for the SP-404 MK2. The link is in the description, and then channel members at any tier get that. And then channel members at the Solar Sailor tier will get all of the samples we're working with today. So if you want to kind of mess with what we're doing or do something different, go for it. Some of them are from other musicians or samples, so I won't be including those, but anything we make, like the drums and stuff like that, I will. If they allow me to post the other samples, I will. But I think we're going to add some sound generator. I think it was Psychrock mentioning hearing a high-pitched ARP. I am hearing something too to add. So yeah, we'll do that. But the Solar Sailors will get any sounds we make, and I think we're going to add, which you can't see, but the guitar at the end. I've been trying to add guitar to like every track because I started teaching guitar now, so I'm trying to like just keep working on it all the time because it's hard as a parent to get reps in to practice. So I'll take it where I can, right? You know, so yeah. Okay, so I'm dropping this hi-hat, and let's hear how that pattern sounds now. It's still pretty loud to me, so I'm gonna take it down. Okay, and let's find that. We'll take these down a little bit. Let's drop that one down a little. And then I still think that one's way too loud. Perfect. Okay. We'll get to adding bus 3 and 4 in a minute. Let's see what we've got so far. So we've got basically a loop idea. We need a bass, maybe a lead, which we could possibly get from... I'm just hearing what sounds are in this sample. Maybe that first little lead might be able to do something there. Let's take, so it's like to here. We'll see. I don't know if I'm feeling that, but let's see what we've got. If we turn on the pattern. I think we're gonna need to do something with like sound generator. It's just a little kind of not exact. It's not long enough in my opinion. So let's go into sound generator, and I'm gonna lower the level because last live stream I had it at 127 and I just blew out my eardrums. So and probably yours. So let's find cosine maybe go up. Let's go up. Yeah, we'll probably want that. And we'll do C. I'm going to put that there. Okay. I know it sounds like crap right now, but hold on. Let's put that one there. Record that there. Now, one thing, I've done a lot of videos on Sound Generator, and we've talked about putting one off slightly in terms of pitch to kind of get it more chorusy and stuff. But if you change any value here before you merge sample, it actually doesn't make any effect. So what you have to do is actually go in and resample it once you've made the fine tuning. So that's what we're going to use, but we need to resample this. So I'm just going to go here and quickly just... Perfect. So now, just so you can hear the difference, if we set this back to 0, hear how there's that chorusing effect? So that will give us a little more chorus, basically, but just more character when we merge samples. So let's do that, and I'm totally blanking. Oh, it's resample. I was like, I'm blanking on the merge sample. We're going to do this one, the cosine at 100%, but this one we're going to drop down a little bit, maybe 60%, and we're going to merge those two together. And I'm going through this quickly because, I mean, I've got a lot of videos showing merge sample and designing synths with Sound Generator, but if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat. And then I'll link those Sound Generator videos in the description afterwards. So now we've got our sound, but it's still not where we want it because we need a filter. Sound Generator is just a wide open filter. So what we're going to do to kind of simulate moving a filter is put this LFO on. We don't need a ton of depth, and we could do a very slow LFO, like 1 bar. But hear how it opens that filter? And then let's add maybe... I know what we'll do. Well, let's put on... Yeah, we'll put on just a little reverb, and then on bus 3 and 4, we're gonna put on... Perfect. We're really, I mean, everything's really gritty and dreamy in this track, so I want to keep that vibe. So I'm gonna do... Ooh, have to decide now. Cassette sim into 303 or 404 into... Let's do into that 303, and let's check what the settings are. Let's get a little noise. There we go. Okay, now we're going to resample one more time. And somebody had mentioned up above that, I mean, one way to do it is we could just use the looper to do this instead of going through all this resampling. But this is just a little quicker right now for me, so I'm going to do it this way. Get all that reverb tail. Okay, that should do it. Now we need to shut off bus 3 and 4. Perfect. So we'll just adjust this sample a little bit. Where's that? That. I don't want that. So let's do maybe to there. And then we can do a little release. Put the hold. Perfect. Now if we go in, turn on poly mode. We can make chords, we can do whatever. Now this is pretty cluttered, so let's find all those sounds. Okay, so it's all those, so we'll get rid of that, that. And that gives us our little Sound Generator track, which might be even not the octave we want. Let's see. just kind of finding the art that I want to put over it. But I do think like a dreamy kind of art going over it will be perfect. We've got Be Jammin' Since Birth in the chat. What's going on? Anna Motion, what's up? How are you? Like that should work. Let's put that in. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll make another copy and then we're going to just record something in and just kind of see what sticks. Let's just see what we got. I'm gonna let it run, put it in rehearsal for a second. Oh, I like that. That note, though, let's undo that one. Yeah, that should work. Oh, nice! Anna says they got their 404 Mark II on Thursday. How are you liking it? It is a complicated beast to learn at first, but once it kind of starts to click, it works. Yeah, is it your first 404? That's a great question, PsychRock. Okay, let's throw that on. Now, let's get Kodama on. Okay, I like that. Now, one thing that's very much missing is a bass line. It seems like we're actually working in the key of C, which makes it pretty easy, or something that includes C, because that's what we're doing for sound generators, just C, and then the notes are in the scale. I have all the, if you do need help with sound generator and chromatic mode, all of the chord charts, I made a whole chord chart using sound generator in the cheat sheet, so that's there if you need that type of stuff. But let's get a bass. So I know we cluttered up that one. Yeah, we got a lot here. So I think where we've got the drums, we're gonna put the bass, because I always put bass in bus 2, because typically bus 1 is like my like melodic section. So I put Kodama or a reverb or something, and then on bus 2 I'll do either live effects when I'm jamming out, or I kind of put something to kind of solidify it all together. So let's put the bass here. So I'm just thinking what kind of bass sound we want. We'll start, I mean, you can never go wrong with like a saw mixed with a sine wave. And disregard that Kodama, it's not going to be in there. Let's do a sine wave at -1, put that there. And then let's get in a sine wave. Or do we? I can't even hear that. Tell you what, we'll do triangle. So it is there. It might just be a little hard to hear if you're not wearing like headphones or something. But that's why I always put something with a much more harmonic content. One other thing, actually, you know what? Just to play it safe, I'm going to delete those two. Let's put it back up 1 octave for 2 reasons. If anybody's watching on a phone, I want to make sure you can hear it, but also it gives us more flexibility when it comes time to do chromatic mode. We can go up and down more. So we got the triangle wave, then let's also get the saw. Okay, let's put those in. That's perfect. The other thing we could do, yeah, let's do it. What the heck? let's go up and put a sine or a saw that's 1 octave higher, and that can go kind of quietly in the mix there. I'm just going to shut off CodaMod, but it's not going to get baked in. So we're going to go Shift Resample to get into Merge Sample. These two we can do 100%, but this one I just want a little bit of that higher octave. And then we'll just put that in, let's say right here on 8. All right. So we just have a little bit of a different sound. Now again, we got to do filter. And then I also want a chorus. Juno chorus is usually my go-to. Much better. And then over in bus 3 and 4, I think we're going to want, yeah, that'll work. Now, I still have not updated to 4.05 or 06, so we could get the resample bug. So if we do, we'll just do it over again. But let's hope we don't. Looks like we're good. Okay, perfect. Now let's shut off bus 3 and 4 again. Perfect. So the original sounds we had, go into that, add some effects. Nice big bass. We could also do another resample with like isolator to up the bass or something like that. Actually, I think we will do that really quickly, and then we'll get back to finishing this track. It's a cumbersome workflow having only these 4 buses, but there is a lot you can do with it. Yeah, that's perfect. Let's resample that in. All right, there we go. Much bigger bass. I like that. Okay, so let's check out what... Okay, now what we're going to do is, before we put that bass in, I want to extend that pattern. So it's been a second, but I think we can hit, yeah, there we go. So if we do choose a pattern, or hit pattern edit first, I apologize, then hit the pattern you want. Now you get into a menu, you can go to the value knob or the enter knob and hit duplicate, and now we're going to be at 8. And I want to do that because I want that 8th bar to have a bit of a different note to the bass. So let's turn that on and start figuring out that bass again. Yeah, I like that. Okay, let's get that. And now I do need a count in. I don't know why we have count in off, or the metronome was off. So we are going to have the metronome on for a second because I want to get count in. And we're going to go to a grid of 8 with a bit more quantize just to have that. Okay, we're going to have it run over again. I got confused why it was like playing something, but that's all right. While that's running through, oh, we don't want 16 velocity. Okay, well, we're almost there, but let's just let it run through and then we'll play the part. Okay, here we go. Now what I want to do though is get out of the pattern and add a little release. Hear how I want that bass to ring out a little bit. So every time I let my finger off, instead of just stopping, it gets a little tail to it. That's that part, releasing. All right. And I think we can probably take the bass down a little bit. Perfect. All right. All right. Couple things in the chat. So Anna says they're looking for ways to customize the SP. Going to print and cut some skins, and then we'll look at the caps. PsychRock recommended chroma caps. How do you like those chroma caps? As you can see, in the 2 or 3 years that I've had the SP, I've actually not customized it at all. I probably should. I just kind of like the way it looks, but I always do want kind of different caps or something. So let me know what you think about that. And then PushDaButton, one of our channel members, is in the chat. What's going on? Says, yo, what's up? Excited to see what you're cooking up. Yeah, happy to have you with us. But yeah, so I think we've got pretty much, oh, I know. The kick and the bass. Let's get it to sit a little bit better. It's not sidechain compression, but if we add a little attack, and you can hear and you can see it's gonna, let me do a lot. Hear how it fades in? That can help it to kind of wrap under the transient or the main sound of the kick. So we'll just use that and let's see what that's like. I always find that kind of sidechain or fade in on the bass and even synths or like that main melody help to kind of give it more of a dreamy quality, because that's definitely what I want for this track. All right, let's throw on some SP special sauce with yeah, let's do cassette sim and 303, and this is going to be kind of our mastering chain, so to speak. We will put a little age, and for right now, I'm going to try a little bit more drive than normal. So I want this to really sound like tape warped. We're going to do a lot of compression, just a little noise, and then a little wow and flutter, and let's see what we got there. Okay, that's probably too much drive. Let's go in and change that. We could even add just a little hiss on that cassette sim. I really want it to sound like it was recorded on like a broken tape or something. That's just kind of the vibe I'm getting here. All right. We do have some other samples, so maybe we should just check those out. I got this sample. I think these two are from, not this one. Where is that main? These two are from an old DiBiase's Discord sample flip. But I thought this Rhodes could be cool. There was a chord somewhere in it. That one? Where was it? No, this one. That right there. Yeah, let's do that. Might be able to get something from that. And then I think we might just start sequencing it out and do some guitar. It's already 12, so we've been going for about an hour. All right. Yeah, that should work. Let's see what we get from that. And what do we pitch to? All right, I'm gonna play this part. Let's go up maybe 4. I don't know, it might be a little too conflicting, but I think going up 4, or even, would it be what? Maybe 6. What did we set? Oh, wait a second. Let's put that to 6. Yeah, I think the song already has so much going on that we don't even need to add anymore. Maybe we'll put some guitar on top. But I kind of like what the song is as it stands. All right, let's do some arranging. Let's figure out the parts that we want, and then we'll go from there. So let's take this, and we're gonna put on 9, and this is gonna be our intro. I don't know what that one is. That's a piano? Okay. Let's just the main part. Perfect. Okay, and then we're gonna copy this one down here and just add really quickly a kick and drum to the ending of it. Oh, but is this in? Yeah, this is an 8. Okay. So actually what we'll do is we'll just record onto here. TR rec mode. Let's go right on the last page and get a snare. Okay, that's a little slow. Maybe we'll just live record that in. I'm gonna just delete that. Let's actually, I know what we could do just to make it, no, we'll just keep it with the 8 bar. Sorry, I'm indecisive at this moment. I'm trying to figure out what I want to put here, and it takes a second sometimes to figure out where you want to go with it. Now, why is it not showing me? That's weird. It's like not showing any of the. Okay, it's all there. So there we go. Let's do that. Push the Button says, at times like this, I really miss the granular synth engine from the Roland P6 on the 404. I know. That's something that really should be on here for sure. It would be so cool to take, like to resample that part we just made and then put it in the granular and get some really crazy sounds out of it. That would be awesome. Anyways. Okay, let's go and we're going to record. I think this is our drums. Okay, hopefully that works. So now let's move that here. I didn't have the click track. I think I've got a setting that's got it off or something, but it doesn't matter. Let's find the parts that now we want to put in. So we want all of this and not the bass. Yeah, just the drums. And, oh yeah, there's that other hi-hat, right? Let's not do that hi-hat yet. Oh, actually, no, let's do that hi-hat, not these. Because I think that's going to have that trippier sound. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, now we'll move this one here. And let's figure out, let's get everything in now, other than that lead. So all the hi-hats, the bass. And then let's get everything. Very simple arrangement. What I would probably do, we'll do a little bit I think, but I would flesh out, which we did I think in the last live stream or maybe the one before that, make a bunch of like alternative versions of these where you have the drums drop out at the start or at the beginning. Since we are at 8 bars, we can actually do that a little bit in these bars. Maybe that could be cool. Yeah, we'll do that real quick actually, but let's just run through it, see what we've got to make sure this is flowing in the way I'm kind of imagining it, and then we'll go from there. says they've got a drop. No worries. Thanks for joining. Congrats on getting the 404. I hope you are having a lot of fun with it. And yeah, we'll see you next time. All right, and here the lead comes in. Okay, all right. Now, one thing we need either a B section or just kind of a dropout. So what we'll do is we'll just make a section up here that's just the bass and the drums. And then I like that. You can really hear all those little snare ghost notes in that version when all the main stuff is out. Then we'll do one more that starts building it up. We'll have all of that, and then that lead, which is here. I like that. Okay, there's a lot more I would do. I would love to have like a synth in this original build-up, and then we will just do a couple of quick dropouts in these sections. But I think we're basically going to call that, and then maybe we'll continue this track in a future live stream or something. But I'm tempted to try and throw a guitar on top, but I don't really know if it needs it. There's actually a lot going on sonically. So yeah, I'm not sure it needs it. We could maybe... Do we still have that white noise from last week's? Yes, we do. We still have... So last week's live stream, we made a couple of transition effects using the noise setting on Sound Generator. I have one that, if you can see here, where is it? This one goes backwards, and this one is forwards. Those might be nice to act as a kind of transition effect. Maybe we'll put those in really quick in just a couple of examples. Where is that? Yeah, I think we'll just put those in really quick and then maybe do a couple of drum dropouts, and then I think basically we've got the song done. I just want to know why I can't seem to hear the metronome. But that's okay. I guess we'll just use the hi-hats. So let's put this here. And we're going to go, let's do quarter, because we're just going to put in that white noise, which was here. So we have to let this run. So I appreciate your patience as we have to go through this before we can put that part in. I think it's just one bar, so let's go. Yeah, okay, perfect. And let's raise that volume a little bit. Perfect, okay. And then I think we'll just add... That's what we'll do. We'll put this here and we'll just add that other white noise. Normally I would add it in a lot more places, but I don't want to take too much time on it, so we'll just let it run and do it. Oh, I forgot it's supposed to be at the start, actually. That'll work. So all I'm doing here is just adding some transition sounds that are going to give a little more ear candy to the ear as we transition between parts. The other thing that we'll need to do is just go in and I think in here, I'm just trying to think. Let's just copy these really quick just in case I don't like what we do with it. But I think here we'll drop out a couple of kicks. In this section, we'll just go to TR-Rec mode, and we'll just check out the kick. Maybe on page 5, let's drop out those. Drop that out. We can go to, where's that? Yeah, here. On page 5. So here, if we get over to the 5th bar, here it kind of drops out. And let's add a couple of hi-hats here. And maybe we'll even do a little substep. Let's hear what that sounds like. Yeah, I like that. There we go. Now, what I would probably do, if I have more time, but we're running a little short, I would add substep changes and stuff to kind of all of these. I think we'll just do a couple and maybe change some variety to the drums and stuff. Psych Rock has got a bounce. No worries. It says, dig it, man. I have to do some work. I hear you. I got to go soon anyways myself, but we're going to just do a couple more changes and things like that to this. But have a good day. Push the Button says the noise effects thing is really cool. It added a more ethereal vibe that perfectly matched with the synth pads. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, and that last week's live stream, we made those noise effects. I think it was last week's. Might have been the week before. But yeah, that is just using the noise 1 in the sound generator and then exporting it and adding just a release or attack, depending on if you want it to be a riser or kind of a fall when you get to a new part. Okay, so the last thing I want to do though, let's go just add a couple little varieties here. In this one, we'll go on the 4th bar. Let's add that substep there, but with a lot less velocity. And maybe a normal one. That's right there. Yeah, that should work. And on this one, we'll do 1 as well. Go up in velocity here, and then up here we'll go to 70. That should work. So we're just adding a little more variety. We can also go into maybe the kick. Yeah, that's perfect. All right, and then in this one, once we add those hi-hats, maybe there's another, I'm almost wondering if there's like another kick we want to, not kick, hi-hat. I think there's a lot of hi-hats though. We'll leave it at that. All right, so the last thing we'll do is just in that last pattern, the kind of big, I think we'll do it on this one. I don't know if we need that. We'll call it there, yeah. Let's do a drum dropout at the end of this one. So we'll go into TR-Rec mode, go here. Oh, we're not in pattern. Here we go. We'll go here, go into TR-Rec mode, and let's just go to the drums, go to that last bar. We're gonna drop all the kick out. Let's do the whole thing. Let's leave that one in though. Oh, I like that. And then that will lead into the B section as well. We'll run through it one more time, go to the B section. Perfect. Okay, I think we're going to call that song done. I'm going to just pattern chain an idea and we'll jam out. This is probably, well, I don't want to say where I'd leave the track. I think I'd leave the arrangement around this. I would definitely want to add some synths on top, like have a riser in that first one as it leads into the drums, maybe a guitar. So if you want to see more of this track, let me know. I actually really dig where this went, but I think there's some things I would want to add and change. Basically, I'm thinking as we get into kind of the holiday season, there's a couple of songs from the year. We've made basically a song every week on the channel. I'm kind of contemplating taking my favorite ones and your favorite ones, whichever ones you all like, and finishing them on some live streams, and then like proper finishing them on the Digitact or SP, and then moving it into the DAW, kind of adding these transition effects, adding additional MIDI, all that, then releasing it as like an EP at the start of the year. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in seeing, kind of how to finish these ideas, whether in the DAW or in a DAW-less setup, let me know in the chat or post it in the comments when this video is done. But yeah, I think we'll just pattern chain this. So I'll just select that one. Let's do this, this, this. Thinking we'll do maybe 2 of the chorus into the bass, and then 2 of the chorus, and then just end on that intro loop again. That should work. So with that, I think we'll call this track. The samples will go up for Solar Sailor members, and then I'll post the final jam that I do for all channel members. It is a great way to help support the channel, but just hang out is more than enough. And if you're looking for an easy to reference quick start guide and cheat sheet for the SP, you can check out the SP404 cheat sheet. The link's in the description. It's got tons of synth recipes with sound generator, chord charts, all that kind of stuff, pattern chaining, everything you need. And I'm going to have an update coming soon with some P6 integration type stuff. It's not official integration, but like how you can integrate the two together like we've done in live streams. But with that, I appreciate you hanging out, and we'll jam out. I'm going to just mute the microphone. But yeah, all right, I'll see you next time. I want to talk about finishing tracks, specifically DAW-less jams, making music on the SP404, or any sort of DAW-less gear where the output is going to end up being a stereo 2-track. I really like performing my songs live, recording that, and then using that as the basis, but you run into a pretty big problem with that where it's a stereo 2-track, and there's not much you can do with that stereo 2-track. So I've figured out a couple of different tricks. Several of them we're going to talk about that are in the box. And when I say in the box, I don't mean in the DAW, but in the actual devices you're using. So we'll talk some mixing tricks you can, or mixing hacks, whatever you want to call it, that you can do as you're making the track. And then the big one that I want to focus on after talking about that is something I've started using to finish tracks in the DAW afterwards, using that stereo 2-track. So I'd love to hear from you, though, before we get started, how you finish tracks. I've posted a poll. You can answer that or post it in the chat. There's a lot of different ways to do it. This is just one of the ways, but it helped me create this album that's coming out on Tuesday. This is it on cassette. I've got a link if you want to check it out in the description, but we're going to talk about one of the songs on that album. I made it on this YouTube channel, and then I finished it, and we'll talk how I finished it. So let's start with talking about the mixing methods you can use in the DAW. So let's take a look at this track, which I believe is on pattern chain 1. So we're going to just start it. And so I like to do this live because I like to kind of feel the track as it goes and do different changes. I have this chromatic part that I play on top to add some live performance on top of it. So I would just record this jam into the DAW, right? But before we do that, let's break down this track a little bit. So I've talked about this before, and I'm going to talk about it probably all the time, but I like to think of every layer in a track as a puzzle piece. And as you're building the track, think about how those puzzle pieces connect together. And one of the best things to think about is the octave range of each layer. So your drums, that can kind of sit separately because they're going to be in all sorts of different octave ranges between the kick and the snare and stuff like that. But if you have a sample layer, let's say, or a synth sound that's in this kind of lower mid-range, then you're going to want to think about getting a lead sound that's an octave up or an octave higher than that. And so I'll play you where the lead track comes in. Where is it? I gotta find it. So you can hear we have different octave layers. We've got our kick, we've got the bass, we've got the sample layer, then we have that lead layer, and then you can add additional things which we'll talk about. And so this lets everything kind of sit without worrying about mixing in terms of EQ, filters, and stuff like that. If you want to get more granular from there, then you can start going into creating sort of stems out of your patterns. Before we do that, though, I just want to run to the chat really quick. Interesting. So I asked, how do you finish a track? And 38% said stems into a DAW. How are you getting those stems? I'd love to hear in the chat how you're moving those stems over. If you've got something like Overbridge on the Digitac, that makes it super easy. But if you're doing something like the SP, you're going to run into a few problems unless you stem out without playing the jam, which to me loses kind of the appeal of the hardware setup. 12% said all DAW, and 50% said still figuring that out. All right, well, hopefully for you 50%, this will help. If you're using the SP or any sort of gear that just does stereo 2-track, this will work pretty well. Okay, so one other thing I want to talk about, we talked about thinking about your layers, right? And you can even look on like a frequency spectrum on a DAW with an EQ and get a feel for it. But let's say you are finding there's a lot of clashes between different parts and you want to clean it up. So we can actually create stems out of our patterns. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to copy just single parts from a pattern. So let's say if we go, we have I think our full idea is here on 12. We've got the bass, we've got all of that. We're going to go to copy, and I'm going to choose an empty pad. And then before we hit copy, again, to kind of like verify that we want to copy, we're going to hit remain. And with that, we're going to find whatever sounds. These are all of the samples that are being used in the track. And so I believe this right here is our main sample sound. And you can actually hold it down in here. this one, that's the lead. So we don't want that. Once you've selected the ones you want, then you hit copy. And now we've isolated the stem of our main pad. And so from there, we're going to do copy one more time, but we're not going to copy the pattern. We're going to hit pattern select up here, and we're going to find an empty sample pad. These are back to sample pads now because we hit this pattern select, hit that, then hit copy, and this is going to take a minute. So we'll just let this run. In the interim, anybody a gamer? Let me know in the chat. I'm looking into playing that Avowed. That looks sick. I was playing Mafia Definitive Edition, and that was pretty fun. I was just doing the cloud streaming. But I really want to check out Avowed. I'm hoping it'll scratch that like Skyrim itch, but I've seen differing reviews, so we'll see. But if anybody's tried it, let me know. Square Breakers in the chat. Great videos, bro, and just came by to drop a like. I'm still having a hard time to get into TR rec mode to edit note values. All right, we can talk about that later, or maybe in like a future live stream, but we will talk about that. Synth Sonic says, I lay down my drum and bass line into a Zoom R4 multi-track recorder. Then I jam in layers into a new track on the Zoom and eventually use a USB cable to transfer it all .wav files into Ableton. So you've got then a jam, right? And you're just like thickening it up as you go. That's a cool way to do it. You'll see when we get to the final part, kind of the way that we're going to turn it around, because it does involve the DAW, but it's kind of, for me, it's like minimizing the usage of the DAW, but getting the best of both worlds. But I do as much as I can in hardware. But before we get to that, let's talk this mixing thing. So I think, yeah, this is our new stem of the main sound. So if you did want to just move stems into your DAW, this would work. It is just cumbersome because you have to export every single isolated stem. But that could work, because then you could track it out into a DAW or something else or anything like that. But what I was getting at though is if you want to then mix tracks, right, a little bit more, now that we've got this isolated stem, we could check how we've got our routing. So we have bus 1 into bus 2. So now we have a ton of effects. So I don't want Kodama, but let's say we want to warp this sound up, put a little noise on it, and we can even use this frequency to kind of act as an EQ. But I'm not going to do that because we can go into either an actual EQ, which I forget what page that's on. I know there's an equalizer here, but there it is. Yeah, I don't actually like the equalizer as much. I'd much rather just do isolator. But see how we can control the low end now of this stem? There we go. So that's way grittier than the original version. But then if we wanted to put that into a pattern, you could, let's say, I'll just copy a pattern over and then I'll show you what I do. But let's say we take 12 and put this one on 6. And then we are going to go into TR rec mode, Square Breaker. So if there's anything while I'm in there you want me to cover, let me know. But what I'm going to do though is hit that, and what is it, shift from main? I forget how we get right into TR rec mode. There we go. If you hit shift record while a track is playing, you get into TR rec mode. So let's find those pads that we've got. It's these. So we're going to go into this one. And it's 8 bars, so it'll take a second. But basically you go in and undo all of these parts that are playing in what you turned into the stem. So you can hear we're slowly deleting them. We could have also actually copied everything but this. That would have worked too. So there's multiple ways you can approach it. So this will just take a second though. I think that's everything. No, there's still something playing. Here we go. It's funny when you hear the stems kind of isolated where they're not choking each other because they're in a mute group. But anyways, that's probably good enough. But then what we're gonna do is just find that pattern, which is this one. And now we're going to go into the normal record, so not TR rec mode. Quantize it at 4, or anything really you want. Hard quantize, because we just need the stem to play throughout. So then we're just going to turn on record. I think it was this one. And since I hit it off, we have quantize to fix that. But this is now adding the stem of that original part into this. And there it is. Now, one thing I forgot to do, but I also don't have space, is I would resample that stem to have those effects we added. So make sure you do that process before you put in the sound into the pattern. I forgot to do that, but it also would take more time. But we added these effects, right, to this track. This is how we actually want the stem to sound. So all you got to do is resample that, then do the pattern part that we just did. So pretty easy. But that's how we can either create tracks with stems or create EQ if you did what we talked about at the start and you mixed everything thinking about octaves and pitch ranges and frequencies and things like that, and you're still finding mud, you can do that to fix it. Now we get to kind of the big part that I want to talk about, and that's once we've got the jam where we want it, I like to live perform the track, right? Like I want to play the pattern chain that I created, do some live effects, maybe add that synth on top that I have to kind of add a live performance aspect to it. So I record that right into the DAW, either with USB audio or, you know, going into an audio interface, whatever you prefer. The problem with that though is that, let me switch over to this. I think we can get rid of the SP for right now, which is this one. The problem with that for me is that all you're left with is this stereo 2 track. Ignore all of the embellishment I already added. We're going to talk about that. But we're left with this stereo 2 track, which there's some stuff you can do if you set the BPM of your DAW to the same thing. You can chop parts, you can move things around, you can do all sorts of things because it's going to be locked on a grid. So you can see like this is the start of a bar and it would end, right? That could be a loop. And so if we wanted to kind of extend parts, we could chop them up and do things in that way. But what if you wanted sidechain compression, something that the SP just does not allow for whatsoever? So this is what I did for my album, where I found DAWs that have stem separation or stem splitting. And my main DAW is Logic. They added stem splitting, I think it was in Logic 11, the most recent update, maybe late last year or early last year, something like that. But I believe MPC can do stem separation. FL, and you guys can correct me in the chat, I think FL Studio does stem separation. And then Koala Sampler has a very crude version of stem separation. But see, even though some of them may be more artifacty than other ones, we don't necessarily need to bother with isolating sounds per se. So the artifacts may not be as big of a deal, but if you are going to chop parts or isolate segments, then you would want some of the cleanest stem separation. And so Logic's is pretty decent. I've done some comparison videos if you want to check it out on my channel. But so all you do is you take this jam, you right click and you hit stem splitter. And let me just double check that this is showing. It's not showing. Okay, bummer. I was hoping that would show the window, but it just pops up with a little question asking if you want to do stem separation. And yeah, Squarebreaker says, I use RipX for the stem separation. Definitely, that's a good one too. I covered that a long time ago and have not checked back in on it, but that was pretty crazy, so I probably should. How do you find its quality, Squarebreaker? I've heard, and maybe you can let me know, that you can break it into more than just 4 isolated stems. If that's true, that would be super convenient for this type of workflow we're talking about. But anyways, I separated it into vocals, drums, bass, and then other is what they call it, but really that's like all of the melodic stuff. So like, let's check this out. We can actually isolate the drums now. Hear how we can hear just the drums? So there are some artifacts. I don't know if over the bitrate and all that type of stuff, you're losing some of the quality, but there is a little artifacting. But again, in this instance, it's not a deal breaker because I'm not necessarily isolating parts. I'm keeping the general design of the track as I performed it live. And then all I'm doing is maybe if I want to change volume of parts or do some sort of automation, or like I found a couple issues in the drums right here. And so I just chopped other parts of the drums and put it here. The other thing I was able to do is make this mega reverb wash snare. Hear that thing? And so in the background, that just kind of adds another layer. On the bass, if we open this up, let me make sure we can see at least the mix. Yeah, I was able to add compression. We're gonna see if I can get this window to share. I don't know if I can share the compression window, but I can actually add sidechain compression to all of these parts. You can actually see, where is it? They're sidechained to the drums. Oh yeah, that's why, because there's no drum part right here. But if I put this here, you can hear everything's kind of bouncing around the drums. And see the purple moving. I can't show the plugin, it's not letting me, but you can see like over here, this massive amount of sidechain. And then beyond that, so finally being able to do sidechain on the SP, right? I mean, it's not right on the SP, but it is a nice kind of workaround I found to get that sidechain. Now my synths can be sidechained. And then what I was also able to do is something else Logic added with 11 or furthered. I think the session drummers were already there, but I was able to add some session drummers with different percussion sounds to just kind of flesh out the background sounds. And so I might do some panning changes and things like that, but it just keeps thickening up the track. Another thing, because we've moved it into the DAWs, if you feel it's missing kind of a layer, like we were talking about those puzzle pieces and things like that, you can add MIDI. So I took this Cherry Audio, I think it's the Synthesizer Expander module, the SEM. Really awesome free plugin. I just added this ARP that alone kind of sounds like Stranger Things or something, with a ton of reverb thanks to Supermassive from Valhalla, another free plugin. But when played with the track, it's less Stranger Things sounding and more just kind of like background embellishment. And I also did some automation throughout of the frequency, so it kind of moves up and down. And I think I may have even done, yeah, some Supermassive changes. Let's check this out. This kind of works as a transition almost. Hear the reverb rise. So it almost sounds like this big synth transition. I'll play it in context. That is just that reverb sound. And that led into the part where I drop out what would have been a full drum section. There were additional drums and the bass was even playing in this part. And I turned it into kind of a total pairback with the bass fading back in. And then we get to our crescendo where the drums come back. You can see right here. Yeah, so even though certain parts in the original SP version may have just been kind of flat and the transitions might have been lacking as they just switched between the different patterns. I forgot we've got MIDI on, so it's gonna sound crazy. This is MIDI triggering the SEM. We'll just mute that. But so with our patterns, there might be kind of, it feels like it's missing when you switch between different patterns. And so this is kind of my way to solve that, is adding the transition effects and sounds and things like that in the DAW. Let me make sure that pattern's off and we'll turn on Cherry Audio back. I added another, okay, that just wants to keep running. Oh, it's because the arpeggiator, yeah. Okay, there we go. I added another synth too with Cherry Audio's Octave Cat. Just another small layer that's panned. I didn't do a lot of panning in the track when it came to the SP. And so I just added some, let me raise this for you real quick. You can just hear this kind of in the background. Let's play it with the rest of the track. It's barely even there. A lot of the things I'm doing here is under the surface of the track and just adding to the overall kind of sound and ear candy. And then one last thing that you can do is I actually turned these drums. Let me see, when I do that right click, does this show up? It doesn't. Okay, but if you right click on the drums, you can choose to convert the audio into a sampler track. And that's what this one is, where I was able to then manipulate the actual performance of these drums, because every single, it basically turns it into one shots. And so I added additional effects and changed the way I was playing that part a little bit. And so that's kind of like, I like to think in like Roy G. Biv from Boards of Canada, when it kind of drops down and the drums are, they put like an isolator on it or drop the low end and things like that. That's kind of like this part where the drums mellow out, they simplify, And it's just kind of chilling everything out before we get into that new isolated sound, which was over here. Because originally this just keeps playing the main drum. But I did this whole new sample layer, move things around, and then we have that total dropout where now it's just these synths. And you could even automate additional effects and things like that. So this to me kind of solved my biggest issue, where if I wanted to make changes after I jammed a track, sure, you could re-jam the part, like replay the performance, but I always find that loses some of the kind of original idea of the track. And sometimes like the demo, you know, I played this synth on top. Let me get the SP back on. I did a live synth on top of it, right? Without the MIDI. I think it's, where is it? We gotta find it. It's over here. I did this little synth on top of everything, and I did it live. And if I were to redo the track, it might kind of lose that original thing. Like, let me know in the chat, but sometimes when you record a demo or that first take, that's like the one, there's parts in it that are just perfect, but there's other parts that are a little off. And so I found that doing this stem splitting technique kind of solves the issue, where you can basically have your cake and eat it too, right? You can perform it as you want and then find the areas that weren't right. Like maybe the full track in terms of the melody was fine, but you wanted to change the drums around in certain patterns. Well, instead of trying to do that all in here, you could just move drum parts from the other areas of the track into that spot because you've synced the BPM to the DAW and you could just move things around. So for me, that solved a huge issue. I do want to mention though, overbridge. And I actually, when I was at NAMM, I spoke to a engineer at Roland and was like, hey, is there any way we can get sort of bus effects as multi-track audio? And they were saying that basically the way Roland does USB over audio, it's like really hard. They said they've actually looked into it or something. And I mean, don't quote, this is just casual conversation, but it sounds like it might not be super possible. But if you watch that video I made talking about 5 features the SP needs, I still think that would be huge, because that would solve basically this whole redundancy of having to make the jam, then stem split, get those artifacts. None of that would matter if we could just have multi-out audio. So if you have something like overbridge, which I think the Digitact, I want to say the Octatrack, Digitone, those have it. That can kind of bypass all of this because you can just have every instrument separated, which is huge. I've got a new release out, this album, Through the Quiet Dark, and most of the tracks were made either on the SP or on other DAW-less gear that I pattern sequenced and things like that along with the SP. So my original thought was, why don't I just use either the pattern chains that I've performed or, you know, switch between patterns and then play something on top. I like to turn the SP into a performative device to keep it engaging. A lot of my live sets I turn into videos, and so I want to keep it interesting when you're watching it. So that means doing chromatic mode, doing performance effects, all that type of stuff. So that was my original idea. Let's just do pattern chaining, right? All of these songs I've made, I use the pattern chain. So here's my track Lingering Light. We can turn that on. And if I wanted to, right, I could do this, set the bus 1 effect. That's my main sample pad. I've got the synth here that I can play live. And then the song goes on, and then if I wanted to perform another part or thing like that, I can switch. But the beauty of this pattern chain is I've set the track that I want the song to play through. And so I don't have to worry about changing patterns, which is something I used to do for my live sets where I would just manually change the patterns. But doing it this way means I can play things on top, do effects, or if you want to do live instruments, you can play a live instrument right on top of it. Now the catch here is, and the reason I can't use this for this performance, I use multiple banks for a lot of my tracks. Like this song, Lingering Light, I think it occupies for sure these drums, and a couple other banks for little effects and things like that. So I have songs all over the different projects on the SP. So my struggle and the catch here with this performance method was, well, there's not an easy way to move whole patterns and whole pattern chains to a different project. If I had a blank project, I could move some of that stuff. But even if I did, we'd run out of bank space. So what I chose to do was kind of find a middle ground and look at what parts in the song can I perform live, right? And then in what areas of the track. So as the track plays through, we have different things come in and out, and I can perform them. And so let me quickly just show, just as an example here for this DAW, what I did. I mapped out a song that I did. We'll go back into this song later, but basically what you can do, I just want a physical representation of what I'm talking about. You can find parts that you want to play live, like, oh, I want to do this whole intro here. So I just remove that whole part, and I'm going to play that as a loop that I put on the guitar. And so when it comes to the SP, what I did was just, instead of muting parts in the DAW and then throwing those into the SP, I took the actual slices from the track. So like I have this main. So all you need to do is go, okay, so I'll move this to my live set project. And all we have to do that is hit copy, and you'll see up here, let me see if I can get that a little closer to the camera for you. It says P07, that's project 7. We want that actually on project 2, so you just use this right knob, put it there, and now you see the banks from project 2, and we're using this project. I've already moved a lot of these and stuff because it is a little tedious, but it wouldn't be as tedious and slow as trying to move whole patterns and projects. But so you just move it to where you want it to go on this new project, copy it over, and then now it takes you back to the original project. So you have to switch over to project 2. But there's one other sound that I know we could do on this track, and that would be this bass. So I would move the bass as well. I've already done it, but you just do the same process. And then you need the full backing track, right? Because without that, you're not going to have anything. So there's a couple ways to approach that. You can either perform this, resample it into the SP using the resample method as you play it, or you can just jam it into your DAW, muting whatever sounds you know you want to perform. So like you could just go into that bass and drop it to 0, and then whatever song you play out of it, it's not going to have that part that you're going to play live. From there, if you don't do that, like for me, I had a full jam of it where I had other sounds that I performed live on top, and so I didn't want to recreate those. It kind of loses its vibe. I moved it into the DAW like I showed you with that other one, and I stem split the jam and then just muted the sections or chopped the sections that I knew I was going to perform, exported that, put it back into the SP, and then now we'll go to our live project. I like to have one project that's kind of always my live set, because if I ever need older tracks from previous live sets, they're still here. If you run out of space, I guess that's a problem, but it hasn't stopped me yet so far. So I found, let's go to the track here. So I moved this one here just for the example, but I already put what I want to perform here. And then we'll talk about this in a bit, but you also want to consider overall track volume when it comes to the cohesion as a live set. So like this original version is pretty loud. I had to drop it down quite a bit to kind of blend in with the rest of the tracks. So I'm going to raise the volume a little bit, but chat, let me know if it's a little quiet or anything like that. Just let me know in the chat. But so we have our bass, all of our chops, and so these chops were already in a mute group because of the way I performed them on the SP. But if you haven't done that, then you would want to hit Shift 8, put them in a mute group, which I think is, well, it doesn't matter. It's this one actually. I have a ton in like the same mute group, but it's mute group A, where I just have all of these in the mute group. And all that's going to do is just stop the previous one when you hit the next one. So like if I hold this one, the gate is off. It's a pretty long sample, right? For like a one shot. But if I do this, it cuts it off. And the only reason it played a little bit longer than it normally would, I set a release in the envelope so that this one plays out. But if I drop that, here it just stops. It doesn't even stay lit anymore, right? Because it's just being completely choked. It's no longer getting played. And so that comes in handy because if you're using one shots, sometimes your timing may be a little off compared to the backing track. And so this kind of helps to save that when you're playing live. And so then we have our bass line that will perform chromatically. And then I have the full track minus the intro that I'm going to perform. Let me show you it as the sample. And then minus the whole bass, because I'm going to run that bass through on chromatic mode as it performs. So basically the way I would play this track live is set some effects, and I'll talk about this more, but I make a set map. You don't necessarily have to bring this, and I'm sorry about my handwriting, but I put on whatever bus effects I'm gonna need, and then like I haven't even finished it yet. We'll get into this as we go. And then whatever end transitions we're gonna do. And so, yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the chat. Sammy, I'll get to you in 1 second. Hold on there. So this is, I like to have kind of a map that I can create a muscle memory out of basically for when I do perform. Whether I have this or not, I've been practicing it and I can refer to it in all of my rehearsals. And so I know, okay, this is the bank I need to be for the first track. Bus one's gonna be that. And then whatever end transition effects I'm gonna do. And then I'll also write which bus that's gonna be in. Because as you can see, I have bus one, that's the red one, for the chops, and then I have bus 2 for the main one shot so that I can do different sounds or different effects. And then typically I actually do the opposite of this. I run bus 1 into bus 2, but for this live set I kind of feel like I want to experiment doing separate, because you can do different sounds. So like if I wanted to keep playing this part over the other thing and do, let's say, DJ effect looper, that sound won't get treated, and I like that. So Sammy, you ask, wait, release effects when sample is choked by a mute group. Not when the sample is choked, unless I'm interpreting that wrong. What release does on any sample, whether you're in a mute group or not, is when you let go, it's gonna ring out or keep playing for whatever duration you set. So that can help. I don't know why it's acting trippy right now, but that's all that's gonna do. It just kind of lets it go. If you have gate off, I should say, actually, sorry. But when you have mute group, and you don't have gate on, that's why it was still ringing. See how when I let go, it only plays for a second? You can see that little white line that follows. Whereas if I hold it right, it's gonna play the whole way through. So when I have gate off, which is the way I have these, they will just play the whole way through, whether you have release on or not. But if you have it with a mute group and you have release on, even if you have gate, it will ring out a little more. See how it keeps playing? Whereas you can see it stays lit a little bit after I hit the trigger. So that way, because I just like for this song, I wanted it to have a little bit, when I was writing it, I wanted each pad to have a little more ringing out, because these chops were a little kind of messy. So that was my workaround. So yeah, if you do mute groups and you put release on the envelope, it will work, even if you have gate off on anything like that. So that is a really good trick if you want those to ring out a little bit when you're actually still muting them, which isn't often, but like for this one, it's a good case of this. So let me show you real quick, back to the performance effects here. I've got SX reverb. That's basically what I'm gonna use for every bus one. I like to, when I'm doing chops, have some reverb on it, because otherwise, I don't know, I just feel like it, when you're playing live, sometimes like there's this song, Moon Meld. If I don't have SX reverb on, it's like you hear that stumble. And even if it's right on time, there's still almost that little stumble. So I like to have the SX reverb on to just kind of clean that up. And that's more sometimes a factor of my laziness and how I chopped it. But this is an old track that I've kept here for performing, because it's one of my favorites to play live. So that's just my workaround to just not have to find the project file and do all that stuff. But SX reverb just kind of glues the chops together a little bit. Kodama is another good one for that. Anyways, let's get back to this. So if I were to play this song as I'm intending for the live set, I would perform this intro twice, then hit that, and you'll see I stop playing this because I have the original sample playing again. So it'll go something like this. And then now I can prep the bass sample that I'm going to play. If you hold the value knob and hit 7, it doesn't trigger. Also very useful for any sort of live performance. Hit that chromatic mode. You can do all those effects, whatever. And bass is going to come in a second. And you get the idea. And so then I can still play, if I want to, I can still do some sort of effects on top. Or, you know, SX Reverb. Kodama is another good one. If you're going to use an effect like Kodama, though, make sure you set the BPM of the bank that you're working in, because that really helps. So if you hit Shift 11, which is the tap tempo, you can use this to set the bank. So this one's actually not set yet. I think that song was at 87 BPM from what I remember when we started the pattern. So that means when we use an effect like Kodama, which has a time factor to it, the timing values will be set for the proper BPM. So that will be a big help in terms of making sure the delays work. And you'll see some of them I don't have that, and you just kind of work with that when I'm doing something like a one-shot break where I have a full track. That's kind of my break from doing all these sorts of live sounds and things like that. So I think that's basically the first method that I'm going to use for this live set, and that's just still trying to do some sort of performance on top of the one-shot. And I wanted to do more than just something like, say, Moon Meld, which I've talked about in previous live set explainers, where I have this main pad and then I have this, and so I'd use this in this part and then the chorus, and so most of the track is just a one shot that I can then play this little sound on top of. For this live set, I wanted a little more interactivity and a little more variety. Like for Lingering Light, I'm playing that pad at the start, and then I switch to the bass sounds, and I'm doing effects on top of that. So it just gives a little more variety for performance, but also you have to think if you're doing YouTube videos, right, like what keeps it interesting. And same for just a live performance in general. It's just when you're performing in front of a crowd, they may not be like looking right on the SP, but a video is the eyes are right on that. So I'm thinking of ways to keep it interesting for the video, for the listener, but also for myself, because it's kind of boring if I'm just going to hit that. That's one of the reasons, personally, I don't typically use DJ mode. I just want a little more interactivity and then a little more flexibility with the different ways of performing. There's nothing wrong with DJ mode. It's awesome, and I've seen some incredible SP performances with it. And you can trigger live one-shots on top of DJ mode, so you can still do that. It just, for me, not my preferred way to work. So yeah, one thing though, like, pattern chaining would be my ideal because it is more interactive, it is more structured, and you can also then kind of veer off and do your own alterations and stuff to make it more of like a live track instead of just playing the track that's recorded. The way I'm trying to kind of bridge that gap with this performance is using these things where I'll mute parts, have new sections. As I'll show you when we get into the next track, it'll show it a little bit more. Let me just make sure on my notes here if there's anything else I need to discuss about that. So we move the pattern over. Yeah, we talked about, yeah, so the key here is find the sections, and I'll go back over here for a second. Find the sections that you want to play, and then if you have it on the DAW, then get those isolated sounds, throw them in here and chop it, and I'll show you that in a second. Sammy says, here in listening, man, love the stream. Perfect timing because I just sat down to work on my SP. Nice. Yeah, I really wanted to do some beat making for this live stream, but I needed some time to work on my live set, and I posted a poll 2 days ago, and I was like 100-something votes wanted to see the live set explainer. So I was like, well, this is a good time to work on my live set and just kind of go over my thoughts with you. And then if anybody has tips, feedback, or if these methods resonate with you, let me know. But yeah, I love performing live sets on the SP for this very reason. There's so many different ways you could do it. And this is just my kind of preferred way to do it, because you can still send an external instrument in. Like I could play my guitar on top of all of this. And that's why I like still doing that one-shot method or even the pattern method. It's just a nice way to kind of have some structure not much room for error, but you can then play on top of it. Yeah, one last thing for live performance, some of the effects I really like would be SX Reverb is kind of like we talked about, the glue for your chops, any chops that you're doing. Kodama is a really nice effect to use on the backing track as long as you sync the BPM. SX Reverb works really well as well because it can kind of give this nice reverb sound to the snare if you use it in very small doses, like maybe a wet of anywhere from 1 to 10. That's nice. DJFX Looper is kind of the staple. Isolator can work. Filter is really cool for kind of guiding transitions between different parts in a track, and then Phaser's a nice one. And then of course you can do scatter. There's other ones you can do. If there's any that are your faithfuls, put it in the chat. Ryan's also in the chat, one of the channel members. He says, hey, painting my closet over here, audio is good. Nice to hear, Ryan. Thanks. Have fun painting the closet. Hopefully you get some tips out of this. I know we've been working on some SP stuff. So yeah. All right, let's go into the second example here. So some of the tracks that I'm using for this live set that are on this album were performed on things like the Digitact, and I didn't have Overbridge at the time. So all I had was just a stereo 2 track, and I want to move it to the SP for performance, and that's this track here. And you can see there's a lot for what would be just from a stereo 2 track. And so if we switch over here, I took that original audio file, which is this one up at the top here, and I stem split it in Logic. Thankfully, Logic added the stem splitter, and it's really come in handy of late. And it splits it into vocals, which there's no vocals on this one, drums, and then bass, and it's other, which is the melodic stuff. I'm going to hit play real fast. I'm just going to check if sound is coming through. Okay, yeah, it is. I just can't hear it because I'm into the headset. So I'm going to just turn this volume on briefly, really quickly. So with this, basically what I did was the same kind of method where I found sections that I wanted to play. And for me, that was, I knew I wanted to play this guitar. And so I just chopped a section of that guitar. You can kind of see already, moved it down here, exported it to the SP. And then once I did that, hold on one second. Once I did that, let me switch back to the SP here. Sorry, moving all over the place. I apologize. Once I found this sample right here, and I can raise the volume back up, I said, okay, that's perfect. And since it was synced to a time, I knew that I could, like there was a set measure of 4 bars or whatever have you. I could go into that and set auto mark, which I've already done, but you would just hit this. I did a time division of 4 because it was really 4 guitar chords. I almost did 8 because I wanted that bass note and then the other part, but I was like, that's just more to hit. Didn't feel like dealing with that. So I set that, put those chops to here. And you can hear that I need to fix a few things, which we're going to talk about in just a second. And then I knew that I didn't want to just do that the whole way through, because if I switch back over to Logic, in the stem, that's the melodic stem, there's a bit of a lead that starts playing. You can hear that lead. So if I were to not have that, like just that intro stem that I chopped, that lead would never come. And that's kind of a very important piece of this track. So I knew I couldn't have that run the whole way through. So up here, I only unmuted it all the way through till where that lead comes in. And then there was another part here where I had just a synth playing. And so I was like, oh, I can chop that for the next part. And so I chopped that because that synth stops after that bridge. But I actually, when I made the track for release, I actually just extended it using the copy and paste from the stem. And so that just kept going. So I said, well, that's perfect. So I just took that as a stem over here, chopped that up on the SP, which it has a bit of a different ending. So I had to get a little creative. So when I did that, I chopped it here. That's the first ending, and then this is the second ending. So I was just able to kind of get all of that. Let me go to the chat real quick because it's been buzzing about, I think, rumors of a Mark III. So Romp of Otter says, I've been looking into getting one of these. I saw they dropped in price a bit today. I rarely see Roland stuff on sale. Do you think they might be releasing a Mark III soon, or would it be safe to buy? That's tough. I haven't heard anything. You would think they would have announced that at NAMM. I was at NAMM. I spoke with Roland reps. I had like an hour with a Roland rep talking about the P6 and some other stuff. They knew my channel's all SP. They didn't mention anything. That's not to say they wouldn't. They have no reason to tell me per se, but I would have thought that they might like announce it at NAMM because that would build hype. I think it's 20 years this year though since the SP came out. I think I saw DiBiase post something about that. So there is a possibility about that. With that said, if you look at the history of SPs, they ran the OG SP for a good number of years. The SX was for a really long time, and they just supported the 404. They've been giving the Mark II with updates every year. I think this thing still has a lot to give, and I was talking with someone at the Roland booth. We were just talking. I think they worked on some updates for the SP, and so I think there's still some room that they might have. I don't know though. I have no insider information like Ryan's saying too, but this is still, I think there's still a lot here that they could do. And quite personally, from a consumer angle, I really hope they don't do a Mark III for a while, because I think this is a really awesome piece of gear, and I would love to see them just keep improving it as they've done. They've added the looping, they've added TR rec mode, they added a sound generator. I think a Mark III would add some really cool stuff for sure, but I think there's still a lot here that they could do, so I almost hope not. But let me read the rest of the chat. Sammy says, I wonder about a Mark III too, but it's tough to say. Oh, Romp of Otter, sorry, I didn't answer your question though. I would think you'd be safe, but if you really want to play it safe, wait until April 4th, 404 day, because if they were to announce it and they skip NAMM, that would probably be the day they announce it or release it, if there is something. But the Mark II would go down in price if they do release something, so there is still the option to just get a Mark II at that point. But Sammy's saying, I wonder about a Mark III too, but it's tough to say. No mention of it so far, and they just keep updating the Mark II. Yeah, basically. Okay, so that's basically what I was saying. You said as well. You're right. And like I said, I feel like that's something they would announce at NAMM. Sammy also says it's a great machine, and you can always resell it if you end up wanting new gear later. It's so popular, I reckon there will be a market for a long time. Yeah, there's still a market for the SX and the OG. I was just looking on Reverb for an idea I had. Ryan says, I've got no insider knowledge, but Mark II still seems to be getting lots of active development, and it's not that old. Yeah, I really think they're going to support this for a while, and I could be completely wrong. I hope I'm not, though, because strictly speaking, as a consumer, like, this is such a great piece of gear. I would like to keep getting more on it. Like, I put a video out a couple of weeks ago or months ago that was things they could still add that would make this pretty much a perfect sampler, at least for me. And a lot of comments about what they'd like to see. Some were talking about a Mark III, but I think there's room here that they can keep adding with what they've done, given the track record in the last 3 years of the updates they've given. Let's see. Otter says, that's what I'm thinking too. Even if a Mark III came out next week, this will last for years. Yeah, this is such a powerful piece of gear that no matter what they add, sorry, my eye is, I got something in my eye, but no matter what they release, like they released the P6, which does have things that the Mark II does not have, which is kind of crazy. And yet, a lot of people, myself included, still gravitate to the SP, especially for live performance and things like that. And I don't think that's going to go away. You got 16-minute per pad sample time, a huge amount of banks and projects and all that type of stuff, all the performance effects. Like, even if they release a Mark III, it's still going to be awesome. Anyways, with that, let's get back to this track, Iridescent Bloom. So this is the first track on my new album, and like I said, so I took that guitar part for the beginning, and then I took the synth part, and all I did were the auto marks, because since I chopped the stems, I made sure it was actually a certain amount of bars rather than just kind of a loose thing. So when you do auto chop, it's going to be pretty easy if you do time division to just chop it in whatever duration or amount you want to chop it in. Now, the one thing with the stem split, if we go back to the track, I have this one drum hit over here right before the drums actually come in. Sorry, hold on, I gotta mute that. Actually, it's over here. I apologize. And so I could just make a chop of these sounds, and actually one of the nice things with stem split, I kind of redid that fill by chopping up the samples, but I just decided not to, but because it's a stem split, I don't even know if people would necessarily notice it, but on this chop, you can hear some of the fill, that little hi-hat that comes in. So it's still kind of there. Anyways, you might notice there are some clicks and pops from this chop. So what we need to do is go into the envelope of each of these. And so if you're making one-shots or chops out of any samples you're doing for the live performance, check that you just add a very little amount of attack and release to just smooth out any sort of pops and clicks that might appear. You can hear there's a pop there. There was a pop right at the start of that one. Now it's fixed. See the difference? So that works. And then I'm gonna just do that with the synth as well. And with something like a synth, you can even be a little more crazy with the attack to give it more of a kind of swell up. We'll just do that. And that should work. Okay, so just to show you with this song, actually I can do, hold up, that so you can see, where'd it go? There. So you can see the SP and then actually kind of the outline of the track. If I zoom out a little bit, hold on. We'll just run through this track real quick so you can see. So if you look at this version that has nothing here, that's where I'm going to be performing the main guitar part right before this part. Let me see, because I don't know if you can see my mouse with the way I'm doing it, but I cut all of this because that's all the guitar part. So even when the bass comes in, which is over here, it doesn't matter. Like the one shot I made, I just don't have anything when I made this backing track. And then over here, I muted this part because that's the synth I'm going to play. And then we would just mute that. And so that's kind of the stem. So let's run through this track really quick, and then you'll get an idea of kind of how it's structured. So let me just get SX on. All right, and then we'll do it. So okay, the lead's about to come in. Now the guitar's in the one shot. Comes the synth. Okay, the synth just keeps playing because I muted that synth in the actual track. Hear how the SX reverb hits that snare really nicely. And this will get us nicely to transition effects between tracks. So what I typically do is think of either SX Reverb or Kodama as a way to get kind of a ring out. Because you can get this sort of sound, or if we go to Kodama, well, let's not do 30-second note, but we can get this sort of infinity feedback like that. Switch over to our next track, and I have that ending was on bus 2, but this one starts on bus 1 with this chop. So I can just kind of do this. Whoop. So you can do that where I ended it abruptly. I switched to the wrong thing, but you can have that just keep ringing out, that ending. If we go back over here, hold on. That's going to be crazy, but we'll not do that. I'm going to hit roll if we go here. So we can get that. That's a rough idea of what we're going to do. So you can have that looping, and since I don't have bus 1 going into bus 2, that will just keep playing. And then I can just manually shut down the feedback while I'm playing the next part. That's one way to do a transition. You don't necessarily have to have a transition either. You can have songs end and go into the next song. But again, since the primary focus for the set I'm building currently is for a YouTube video, I do want it to be a sort of continuous mix. But if you're playing live, if you've got other instruments, you don't have to. Another option would be, I've got it somewhere, little like short interludes, right? Like you could have that as an interlude. You could have just a drone that you set and have spoken word on top of it. Anything like that could still work to transition between tracks. So what I would do from there though is enter my set map, and I have every bank that each track is on, the order of the tracks that I'm playing, and then if there's any static effects, like I know I want bus 1 SX reverb for that track, and actually like for something like Moon Meld, I actually need to clarify it because I wouldn't just have SX reverb. I want it to start with a filter that I sweep up, and so I would write filter sweep plus SX reverb so that I know, okay, I'm gonna switch to SX reverb after I do the filter sweep. And then we haven't talked about this yet. In my live sets, I'm doing a lot, right? Like I like to keep it engaging, but sometimes you need a little breather or breathing room. And so I have tracks that will just be one shots that I can just do performance effects on and then prep the SP for the next part. Because basically, if we look, this is bank G. So if we go over to bank G, I have, actually, I think it's bank B. I think I was tripping when I wrote that. Yeah, it's bank B. I have to fix that. But on bank B, I have this track, Chroma Prism, and it's just a one-shot with nothing missing. It's just a full track, which is a totally fine way to play live, switching between stuff. But this is my breathing room, so I hit that, and I don't need to be in that bank anymore because the final track, which is on bank H, I have to do a lot. Like you can see, I have filter, then SX reverb, and it's all performance. So this kind of gives me a second to get ready, take a breath, go to bank H, and then get my bus effects ready. So I know I want that one on there. And then I can still do performance effects on this track. And there you go. And then when that song ends, I could do some sort of SX reverb on top of it, or Kodama, one of those transition effects. Another thing you can even do is just dead stop it, maybe with a faster stop time like that. And then you can start your other track. Just make sure you end the one playing if it's not going to just stop on its own. And now I can have that second track start. Maybe shut off stopper now so I don't forget it later. And this is one of those times like I have that filter plus SX reverb because I'm starting the track. I took this main sample and it's just one full loop of the synth, but I did it at a fully open filter or wherever I end the track's filter, like in the full track. So I can kind of do this to create motion instead of just having a full track. Because let's say, so for the full track, right, let's say it's 2 minutes of a synth that the filter's moving up and down. So I found the loudest part of that filter whenever it was open the most, and I made that loop of just that section, maybe 4 bars or 8 bars. And I set this to loop, and it's just gonna keep playing that. But I can control the filter now as if it was being automated by using Super Filter. So adding a little bit of a live treatment to this. And then once I need it to be opened up, I can turn on that SX reverb to give it a little more reverb or something like that. And then what I'm doing is over on bus 2, I have another 4-bar loop of the lead, and then I have stems or one-shots of the bass. So I can do this. Play the track as I would. And then maybe we'll throw on SX reverb. And this is my end track, right? Nice ambient track. And then I can even shut this one off Maybe turn on some ocean noise. I think that's the ocean. Go back to filter for that. And then we can bring it back in. Now with the filter on it, right? So I'm creating dynamics in the track with just these one shots using the filter on the SP and then just kind of treating it almost as if I was muting parts live on like a Ableton Push or something, right? Like turning things on and off. The only issue with that is you have to be pretty precise with your timings because there's no sort of like engage at start of bar. It's all just when you hit it, it starts playing. So like, because I was talking, I hit that one wrong when I was bringing it back in. So it's just slightly off time. But that is probably my most ambitious one, even though it's probably the simplest track, right? It's just an ambient little vignette. It's the most live I can get these sort of one shots. And you could totally replicate this with a beat type of track where you could be playing drums on top of it or triggering the different sounds. But I thought this was an interesting way to keep some semblance of the original track by having these 4-bar loops, but then having chops of things and being able to turn them on and off to create a fully live version of it from triggering samples. So this is kind of where I want to take the next live set, doing something more like that. But for this one, it's just the ending. And that's why I have that break right before it on not bank G, on bank B, where I'm going to chill out and get that all set up, setting up the filter and all that type of stuff. So when it comes to the set list you're making, you can think about it in a few different ways. The actual performance of it, and have breaks, do whatever between tracks. Like think of the ways you're performing each track and have it flow that's easiest for you to play, but then also think about the tracks themselves. So I like to start with something kind of more energetic and then build it up and then maybe hit a point and then bring it back down. And the last track is usually my kind of chill outro. Other ways you could do it is start with a cool like drone at the start, you know, like an interesting vignette or something, and then get into it. But typically when it comes to, again, I have to think as a YouTuber, you want to get engagement right at the start. And so something more high energy has for me at least been proven best. So that's my set, basically what I'm building. If you've got any questions about this, throw them in the chat. I'll stay on here for a couple minutes. I'm going to double check if there's anything else I needed to cover. If you do want a full guide on all things SP404, talking all about using this for live performance, using it for beat making, all of the different performance effects, what works for different sound types, you know, drums versus melodic sounds and things like that, you can check out my SP404 cheat sheet and quick start guide. It's an easy to reference guide on all things SP. The link's in the description. Channel members get it for free though, and channel members at the Solar Sailor tier and up get all of the samples. So like I'll be throwing up these guitar chops for my track and all that stuff. So if you want to help support the channel, that is the best way. But of course, just hanging out, commenting, leaving a like, it all helps, and it's massively appreciated. So yeah, if you've got any questions, throw it in, because I remember there's one other thing I need to talk about, and that's bus 3 and 4. So we talked already about the two different ways you can use bus 1 and 2. And hopefully, because of how I was explaining switching between the ends of tracks and getting those cool transitions, that's why I've got bus 1 and bus 2 running in parallel, not together. But typically I do run bus 1 into bus 2. But for this reason, for these live set transitions and stuff, I find doing it this way works really well. And then also if you're doing a track, we didn't talk about this method, but if we use one of my older songs from a live set, this is Soundtrack for a Rainy Day, I have the stems, so it's a one shot, right? It's just gonna play the whole song all the way through. I don't need to play anything on top. But I set the drums to bus 2 and everything else to bus 1. And so if I do it this way, then any effects I do on bus 2 aren't gonna affect bus 1. So I can do reverb just on the drums, right? A filter on the drums. This crazy little thing that works great for transitions, like this here. I love doing that. if I were to set that bus 1 to bus 2, just for an example, everything is going to get treated by that. So that's why for live performance, I like to keep them running separate. But when I make tracks on here, like the song Lingering Light, I definitely ran everything from bus 1 into bus 2, because then you get 4 effects rather than 3 per bus that you're doing. And then if you are using external stuff like guitar, I see you, Rump of Otters, but I'll answer that in a second. You get that 5th one, and then they all run into all 5, really, or well, then that sound would go through all 5. So good for resampling and stuff like that. Okay, but bus 3 and 4, I like to treat bus 3 and 4 as my master. So I made sure, luckily, I had all of the pre-masters and masters of these tracks, and so I took the pre-masters because I want everything to be a little closer in volume. And as we discussed at the start, I actually went in and found similar volumes using just a meter, multimeter in Logic. You can see the decibel levels and all that of each track. And I just tried to get them a little closer in volume because for the live set, I want it to be a little more similar in tone, because some are a lot louder, some are a lot quieter. They don't need to be exact. Like, there's no reason for that. You want dynamics in a live set, but I didn't want them to be so drastically different that I'd have to go in post and just do some volume tweaks like on the final version. But bus 3 and 4 I like to have as my first round of mastering if I don't want to master in post. So for me, that's typically cassette sim with a little drive and a little wow and flutter. Hopefully you can see that all right. I have drive at 6, wow and flutter at 16. Everything else is set to 0. And then for bus 4, I will either do compressor or 303 vinyl sim. I've really lately been coming around more to the 303 sims compressor than just the stock compressor on here, because I also like adding additional wow and flutter. I have it on 40, so quite a lot of wow and flutter on this. And then if you really wanted it, you could get that 303 noise on there too, but I don't want that. But the compressor on the 303 vinyl sim is crazy, and I like that it's just one knob. So for this, I kind of just dial it in and then let it be, rather than on the compressor we have let's go back to here, hold on. Over on the compressor we have a lot of other settings. We got to go sustain, attack, ratio, and I'd rather just not worry about it, because if I really need proper compression to master things and stuff, I could do that in the DAW. So I want more of that kind of just crazy SP compression, and the 303 does it really well. All right, so that's my 303, not 303, that's my bus 3 and 4 mastering. This is the glue for me. If we shut that off, just listen to that versus, oh, we're a little off. Just kind of brings it together, makes it a little noisier. I mean, I could also just bypass them instead of switching between, but I like having that. If you have a 3 and 4 recipe, what your favorite is for bus 3 and 4, put it in the chat or throw it in the comments. In the interim, we got Romp of Otters asks, how does plugging a guitar in work with the SP? Can I play along to a backing track live? Yes, you can. My guitar is back there. I don't think I can reach it, but all you got to do is plug it into the input, which is down here. Turn on your input setting. You actually have a amp sim, which is actually pretty decent. The guitar, that's the amp sim from there. That's on my baritone Jazzmaster. And then you just set to, you can just hit play, and if you have external source turned on, you can play right on top of it. So I could trigger this and be playing the live guitar right on top of it, no problem. And then if you're recording and things like that, there's a couple other tweaks you can do and things. But if you're playing live like that, yeah, all you have to do is plug in. I'm checking, hold up. I think I just saw a cable earlier. Here. Let's do this real quick. It's not a guitar. My guitar's way over there behind my drum kit, and I don't feel like grabbing it. But I'll take this S1, which should have some battery left in it. And if I can find, might have one problem though. If I can't find the jack or the 1/4 inch, I just saw it. But that's how it all, oh, here it is. It's right here. We put that there, and then we'll put that in the input. And if we turn this on, I'm going to mute that in case sometimes there's like some crazy noise when you turn something on. Yeah, it's got a really good amp sim. Romp of Otters says, I didn't know that it had an amp sim. Yeah, it's a pretty solid amp sim. You can't do like cabinet simulation and things like that, but the amps on there are pretty good. I've got a blog post talking, walking through all of the different amp settings and which they model, because they model like I think a Mesa Boogie, the Fender Twin, I want to say, and a couple others. They're all pretty good. They've even got like a high distortion one. I forget which one it models off of, but see that? We've got, let's just lower the volume here. Sorry if that like blasted your ears. So let's go, I forget. But yeah, see, I could just play right on top. I have no idea. I'd have to remember what key this is in, because that's a baritone that I think I'm playing 3. Well, E sounds good. But anyways, you get the point. Oh, I know. We'll go to Lingering Light, because I believe Lingering Light is in C. And let's go to a different sound, just to show you that we could do live performance right on top. Oh, these are the stock sounds. Let's get out of that. Go to pattern 4. What do we have here? Oh, that's cool. So let's go to Lingering Light. Go up an octave. There you go. All I had to do. Yeah, so all you have to do if you want to play guitar, whatever instrument, is just turn this on, and then you get that 5th bus effect. So it's actually set to an amp sim. Let's turn on Juno Chorus. Ignore the click for a second. Hey, thanks so much for watching and making it through. I know this was a long video, but I wanted to show you my full process, unedited, in how I make beats using the SP404. It's an incredible piece of gear, but it is complicated. It does have a bit of a learning curve. So I just wanted to have a resource for anyone interested in making beats on here, because I do think in the end, it is really worth it. It's awesome. I use this more than probably any other piece of gear when it comes to making music, even more than the DAW over there. So I wanted to have this sort of resource that you can reference if you ever get stuck in a certain part of the process, or just see ways you can do the mixing process, the arrangement process, all that sort of stuff. Leave a comment below if you made it this far, just to let me know that this type of video works. It's a bit of an experiment, but I just wanted to try it. And if you want to see more about the SP404, check out this playlist right here. I have a full playlist, all the beats I make on it, all the tips, live performance methods, all that sort of stuff. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.